Hello there, my lovelies. Welcome back to another episode of, listening to the voices in our heads with me, Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer. As always, right off the top, I gotta remind you, we gotta make sure we're taking care of ourselves a little bit better every single day. We're definitely worth it, my lovelies. So in today's episode, we're visiting with an old friend, Rachal Flewellen, at Rachal.the.writer over on TikTok and Instagram. And we're actually talking about many things today, including the talk, specifically author talk. We're also looking at what it's like for her transitioning out of teaching in a traditional classroom as an elementary school teacher to becoming author mom who's also working on her master's degree. We get into a little bit of a heated debate on occasion, and just as a reminder, it's a friendly debate, no offenses meant, and unfortunately, the situations we're covering are one of those hard truths that everyone faces regardless of your background kind of situations. So once more, as always, make sure you're taking care of yourself a little bit better each and every day, my friend, because we are all worth at least that. Let's get rocking on this episode. Go for it! Welcome back, my lovelies, to, of course, another episode of Listening to the Voices in Our Heads with an old friend who's returning. Welcome back, Rachal. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you, too. Thanks for having me back.
It's great to see you. It's always a joy to have people old and new, and you came in on an episode where it was a combo of both, and we promised we were going to have you back. So,
well, I'm excited to be here.
You've got a lot to tell us because you've published since the last time we had you on, right?
Not quite. I am slated to publish. My goal is January, although I feel like my writers group is like, no, do it December. And I was like, so I owe you a beta copy too, but it's just been hectic.
We both kind of were discussing right before this. Life got the better of us right now. So let's backtrack and remind everybody who might be new to watching with you joining us. Who are you? What do you do? Kind of where are you headed with your publication then?
All right. Well, I am Rachal Flewellen, known as Rachal the Writer on all of my social media stuff. I was originally a teacher, taught third grade, taught elementary school. That was my plan A. That's what I was like, that's going to get me a paycheck. So technically, I guess it was my plan B. But then I had the opportunity when my husband finished school to be a stay-at-home mom. So I get to stay home with my little girl, and I started finishing books that I had started writing 5-10 years ago. And now the first one is a science fiction near future story titled Obelisk. And it is so close. It's finishing up with my current beta readers. It's going to go through some line edits. I'm supposed to give Jenna a copy of my beta read. And I got my cover, which is going to have a reveal soon. And I'm just excited. And I'm hoping January release date so everybody can spend all their harder or their won and gifted Christmas money on new books.
That's actually something I was entertaining asking people for this year. Just give me book money.
Yeah, so that's part of why I think January is a good day to do it, because everyone's spending money in December for Christmas or other holiday gifts. So I figured, hey, you got money, I bet. Now go buy a book. Support some indie authors.
Why not? And from what I've heard through the grapevine and the snippets I've seen here and there, your book's going to be flabbergasting amazing.
I hope so. My beta readers have all given really great feedback. So I'm feeling excited and optimistic about it. It's definitely not expected for me where I ended up with it. It wasn't the first book I thought I was going to publish. It was a completely different story than what it originally started out as. And it is now like my favorite. So
I would be looking over my shoulder if I had my cover behind me, but I forgot to put them up today. Yeah, that's kind of what happened with the Alliance for me. And I'm learning not to say anything to people about it because shit keeps changing.
yeah. Yep.
we're gonna go into a couple of other questions right quick, but from your experience, has beta reading been helpful for you so far then?
I think so. For me, I'm very paranoid. So I have a hard time just like finding random people to beta read. So a lot of my beta readers are fellow authors that I know personally. So they act as readers and writers.
Correct.
TikTok argument one day when they were like, "That's not a beta reader, that's a critique group." And I'm like, "But some of us have the capacity to beta read as readers, but then also critique." And I think for me, that's been a lot better because my beta readers do read as readers, but also as kind of editors.
Right.
And so I'm getting good feedback on how the story's flowing. And I'm also getting feedback on where I have typos and grammar issues and where things are confusing. So it's
You're
been really
learning a
helpful.
lot.
Yes, I even my cover designer is, her husband's an indie author, and so she also beta reads and does that kind of stuff, and so she's beta reading in an effort to partially to help design the cover, but then she just wanted to keep reading it, and she's caught things that my other beta readers didn't quite catch as far as, like, the story. So, it's
Ooh.
nice having her being more of the artist instead
Mhm.
of a writer because she's catching, like, you know, there was a chapter where one of my characters, she's like, "You've done such a good job developing this character, but his personality falls flat in this chapter." And I immediately went, "Is that the chapter where they're taking a tour of the city?" And she goes, "Yes." And I was like, "That would be why," because I was so focused. I'm good at world building, but I hate having to describe it. And so I was so focused on laying out the city that the dialogue and the personalities just kind of flatlined. So now I know to go back and fix that.
My number one thing I think I remember my editor saying was, get out of the way of your characters, let them talk.
Yeah.
What I have found personally has helped with this, and actually Ash Johnson, who's on my NaNoWriMo updates, she she suggested this: write all your dialogue first, then go back and plug in the description. I'm saving so much tumbleweed. It's working for this project. I don't think it'll work for the Alliance.
I couldn't do that. I can't
Hard.
just I can't dump. I can't just dump certain things. Although what's funny is that you say that, and I just did a video. Oops, sorry. I just did a video on TikTok talking about readers theater, which as teachers we're familiar with,
Yes.
and how it's basically a story, but it's just dialogue. And I even suggested to people, I said, "Hey, why am I talking about readers theater on a writer's TikTok? Because maybe you just need to write your dialogue." What's funny is I could never ever do that. And I tried to write a readers theater for the holidays for teacher pay teacher, and I just quit. I was like, "Nope, nope, can't do this. This is hard."
It is hard. It's one of those things of I love teaching it. I could never write that way
Yeah, well, and
for
my thing
long.
too is even when I did readers theater with my students, even though there was no action, we put action in there. And when I write, there is very rarely, which is probably a problem, and I go through and try to fix this, but I very rarely just go, blah, 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 she said, and end it there. There is usually action, whether it's a shoulder shrug, an eye roll, a sigh, like there's always some action going on. And I
A
have to
little bit of
force
that person's
myself.
persona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to force myself to just go, she said, every once in a while. So it'd be too hard for me not to have like the stuff around them and what's going on because a lot of the time my dialogue plays off of body language and what's happening around them.
Good point. Very good point. So we've kind of already sidetracked. Let's go to question number two. And the
That's okay.
lovelies in the audience are going, we haven't done question two yet. No.
That's because I'm ADHD. It's going to happen.
Well, when you get two teachers together,
Yeah.
enough said.
Yeah.
So, are you indie or trad published, or going which direction rather, since you're yet to be published?
So I originally wanted to go traditional. And then I was very against being indie published. I had no problem with people who were indie published. I didn't think that I could do it. And then I joined TikTok and then I was like, "Oh, no, I'm going to go indie." And I did query for a while. For a while. I last November I queried over the course of 3 or 4 months, like 20 agents. heard back from like 3 of them that were all form letter
Wow.
rejections. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm done with this. Cause by the time I had gotten my latest rejection, I was on TikTok and I realized like indie publishing is the thing. Like
Right.
there's a few of us that are like, let's just take out the big four. Indie publishing's where it's at now. We're going to take over. It's fine. And I think when I originally was going into wanting to publish a book, my thought process was, I don't think I can market myself. I don't think I can do any of this stuff myself. And then I got on TikTok and it is this huge community of writers and authors who are traditionally published and indie published, and it's just a plethora of information. The way YouTube used to be our go-to, now TikTok serves that purpose.
Right.
And I started to realize when over the course of like 5 days, I hit 1,000 followers. I realized apparently I can market myself. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was insane. And so I think realizing I could market myself, and then I realized the biggest issue was cost. And maybe I'm just a little cocky, but I f- I feel like I'm a pretty good writer, and when I get feedback from other writers and beta readers and there isn't as many corrections as one might expect, I start to go, I can't really afford an editor right now, so I'm just going to do the best that I can and get as many
Right.
eyes on it as possible. My cover artist and I we're doing a trade, skill for skill. So, I think down the line, because her husband, he indie published without all the bells and whistles, and this
Mhm.
time they hired a line editor, I think, and a manuscript person, and I think they just went with like a marketing team too. So they're doing things a little different this time to see how it works. But they also originally went Amazon exclusive, and now they're thinking going wide with his newest release. So I think it's all a learning process and figuring out what works best. I think I am
Mhm.
more indie minded now than I was. Um, so it might not be a good choice, but that's where we are.
It also does allow you to figure out really what market you want to write for, in my opinion. And yes, I agree. Indie is expensive. Boy, indie is expensive. But I hear from a lot of trad that they're doing similar, like they literally have to pay for their own Facebook ads for some of them now too. And I'm like, so does that mean indie's doing something right?
From what I'm hearing on TikTok, it's starting to sound like, especially with the pandemic and everybody just kind of going their own way with new ideas in writing. I mean, traditional publishing, there's two sides on this particular coin. One is that they're just so oversaturated that they can afford to be picky, and the other
Mm-hmm.
side is that it's all about the money. So they're only going to take things that they think are marketable. And one example that I kept running into when I was trying to query agents was the desire for diversity call, where all of
Oh,
the agents,
yes.
and like I am all for diversity in authorship and diversity in writing. I support fellow authors who are from minority cultures and diverse cultures. I think that's great. But at the same time, want authors that are diverse from,
Hmm.
people of color or LGBTQ plus, which is fine. But now that's, I think, why a lot of us normal, well, I shouldn't say normal, that is not a good choice, but the straight, white, cis, whatever people aren't getting into traditional publishing anymore because they want all this diversity, but then they're also oversaturated and it's all
Mhm.
about the money. So what can they sell? What can't they sell? And it's really hard to talk about that without it sounding bad because I want diversity, but I'm also being stonewalled because I'm
Right.
not diverse. But they also used to be stonewalled too. So it's so hard to like talk about that.
Exactly. And I hear exactly what you're saying. It's like instead of opening the spectrum of focus to just include more people, they're not opening the spectrum of focus at all. They're just shifting it
Yep.
to where it somehow acts like the middle section on a Venn diagram.
Yep.
Can't split people like that in every single case categorically, sadly. What we need trad to do is to open the lens wider, not move it.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, because it's so hard because I don't want to sit here and basically spout my white privilege.
Right.
But it is discouraging as an author, just an author trying to query and realizing half of the agents that would take your book won't take it because you aren't of this particular category. But then it's also
Because you are or
recognizing,
aren't. Yeah.
yeah, but it's also recognizing like they've had to deal with that for so long. So I don't
Mhm.
want to say anything about it, but at the same time, like it's a reality. It's a reality that regardless of, what category you fall into, white, person of color, straight, not straight, all of that, we're all just getting kind of stonewalled by traditional publishing right now because
Right.
no matter what they say they want, ultimately what it comes down to is money. The publishers just want to make money.
Right there.
So,
And it makes it really difficult for us because we don't know if our content is worth our time. And that sounds horrible, but that's what it feels like sometimes too.
yeah, it's been interesting. Like I said, I feel like there's a few indie authors on TikTok that are kind of working towards unintentionally starting a movement about this because, there's this big thing on TikTok talking about how we put a lot of time and work into what we do, but we are underselling, underpricing, and not even making
Yes.
a living or thriving wage. And that's set by big publishing and that's set by Amazon and instant gratification and people not recognizing the amount of work and time and money that goes into writing a book. And so I'm kind of over here like I want to price my book competitively, but I also want to price my book a little bit more than that to start making people realize like get comfortable with seeing books being priced a little bit higher so that everybody else
Right.
we can just gradually get it to what we should be paying for books. And
Correct.
it's look, I don't want to go traditional anymore just because the publishing companies, especially the big ones that are, trying to merge and take over the world, they make me angry.
Agreed. Very agreed. And something I think a lot of authors forget, and this is just you get into your business and your passion. But from the perspective of someone who also does video gaming, I have to agree with a trad published author, J.R. Ward. She once said, I'm not just competing for people's hard earned dollars to justify what she asks people to pay for her book. She says, I also need to consider what the price of the new video game on the market is. I'm against that for people's attention and time and money.
Well, and what's baffling is people are willing to drop 50, 60, $200 for a limited edition on a video game, my
Yep,
husband being one of those people. But those
guilty.
same people aren't willing to spend $20 on a paperback book
They won't
or
even go to,
$7 on an ebook.
yes,
They
yes.
want a free ebook or a 99-cent ebook. And it's like, it's so crazy. Like I said, TikTok is a great source of information. And a lot of these authors, most of them women that I've seen, they've broken it down. And they're like, you sell a book for 250, you get 2 cents after you pay all of
Yes.
these royalties and all these fees to people, or I guess the royalties are yours, but after you pay, even if you went completely indie and you didn't pay for an editor and you did
Mhm.
put a lot of money into your cover and all this stuff, you still have to pay, you know, and you lose money on that. You still have to pay for Ingram Spark to sell your book. And so by the
Correct.
time you sell one book, even if you price it at $5, you're only looking at 40 cents a book or less even. And it's like to make up the five to $10,000 costs we put into just getting the book out there, if we had that kind of money, not to mention the hours we spend on it. I mean, in the crafting community, people price based on their
Yes.
time and the cost of their products. I mean, if you could you imagine if we charged as much per page of book that an editor would charge per page of book? Nobody's going to buy a $250 book, a
It'll
$700 book.
Yeah, it'll go back to the way it was when the church controlled bookmaking because we didn't have printing presses readily available yet.
Hmm.
Books will go up to only being in rich people's houses again, sadly.
Right. And that was a big conversation that ended up on TikTok recently about needing to check your privilege because somebody had posted a video showing all of their bookshelves and how special they were, and then kind of judging people about not having books. And I went on there and I said, look, first of all, having books, and now this is a kind of a disagreement. I don't think having books is a privilege. I think anybody can have access to books.
It
I think it's an
didn't used to be that way, and I kind of
right.
agree with you, but
But
yeah.
what I pointed out was like as an adult, you have ways to get books, and a lot of the reason people don't have bookshelves is space. Uh the money to buy bookshelves, and then books themselves are expensive. Like you can't judge a person by their bookshelves. You don't know how many ebooks they have. But a lot of it
Correct.
boiled down to some of these people just don't like to read, and that's where I came in as a teacher and I said, accessibility for books and interest in books starts when they're kids. If
Yes,
they
it
come
is
from a
not the
low
school.
income household, if they don't have access to a public library, if the school doesn't have books for them, they're not going to like books, so they're not going to grow into wanting to have bookshelves.
Hmm.
Um and I don't think having books should be a privilege. I think it should be an accessible right. I think you should be able to go to the library and get a book, or the free little book things. Dolly Parton started for children 5 and under the Imagination
Yes.
Library, where she will mail you a free book a month for your kid, which unfortunately is not available in my area, but it definitely is available in
In
like the
most
big,
states.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and I think it's just because where I am, it's more rural. We're in
Hmm.
Idaho. It's, it's potato country. But in North Carolina is when we signed up and we got a bunch of books. And my daughter, we go to the store and she always picks out a book and she loves books. And that's
And
because she grew up with it.
yeah. And you're supposed to get, I think it's for the first 5 years of
Hmm.
life. That's 12 books a year. And kids' books, because they
Hmm.
have all the colored pictures and stuff, are expensive to print.
Yes.
Oh my God. Printing a kid's book versus a chapter book is so much more expensive.
Yep.
I know
I've looked into that.
a couple of children's books authors I was talking with weeks ago about how do you price your books? And they said, yeah, my books will always cost more than a smutty novel because of the ink, because I have to pay an illustrator
Yep.
as well for every single image every time it's used. And I'm like, well, apparently I have a kitty who agrees. You don't say. You've been fed. I apologize, lovelies.
You're
It's
fine.
Molly Moo. She wanted to say hello. She had to put in her 2 cents.
Yeah. Those
So,
it's crazy because I'll take my daughter, like we'll go to Target or Walmart and we'll look at books, and you know, just the little like the board books, especially
yeah.
because she was when she was younger, they're 7, 8, $10 a book. And if they have a licensed character on them like Mickey Mouse or Blippy, that's gonna go up. And
Yep.
there I actually get really surprised when I find a book for her that's a picture book that's cheaper. Like there is an author, Tom Fletcher, who writes the cutest books, and
Mm-hmm.
she loves them. And every time he has a new one come out, I add it to my Amazon list, and there's like 4 there that I need to get for her. But they're only like $12, and I'm sitting here like, that's a steal for these books. Like because they're hardback with a dust jacket and they're colored and they're like full color pages, and they're not little. They're like a big hardback paper book.
Wow.
Yeah, for like $12. And she loves them, and I have bought every single one he has, and I have pre-ordered ones that weren't out yet because they are engaging and exciting and fun, and she loves them, and they're $12. Like he should
I'm
be
sitting,
charging more.
I'm sitting here going, and my novel was priced at $10 paperback with my signature, and people wouldn't buy it at a craft fair.
Oh, it blows my mind. I'm one of
People
those
priorities.
Yeah. I'm one of those people, like my friend whose wife is the cover author and he's or cover artist, and he's an indie author. Um, I signed up to be part of his street team for the books that he'd already released. So I got
Mm-hmm.
to read the first one for free. And I immediately bought all 3 of or the other 2 as ebooks. Um, and I had every intention of buying the physical copies as well, which I actually they had a giveaway and I just won the first copy. So, but like I'm one of those people where if I think the book will be interesting or I just really want to support the author, I will at least buy the ebook because I can afford to do that, because I recognize like money's tight right now. But if I love the book, I go find the physical copy and add it to my list of books to buy, and I'll buy your book twice. I don't care.
Right.
I'll buy the ebook and the physical copy. That's fine.
And that's kind of what I like about the ebook option it's a good way to get into a new author and then love on them more later. It's been a, as far as reading goes, a journey in finding genres have changed over the years greatly. And I
Mhm.
apologize. Somebody demanded cuddles, so
It's
if
all
you
good.
hear purring and meowing on the mic, it's her. Let's go ahead to our next question. We talked about this previously. Are you a plotter, pantster, or plantster? You have a slightly different take on it, and I wanted everyone to hear it again.
It's been a while since I've actually looked at that take. I did do a TikTok video about it months ago, but I didn't like that there were only 3 options. I'm not a plotter. I can't outline everything. I'm not a pantser. I don't just go for it. But planter felt too middle ground for both of those. And so I created like 2 more points on that little spectrum and made a little questionnaire. And by the time I finished, I was between a plotter and a planter. So basically, what that means is I have the idea in my head and I'll usually start writing the first 4 or 5 chapters. And then at a certain point, there's too much in my head and I have to outline it just so I make sure I don't forget
Yeah.
anything. But my outline is like I make a table in Word, I write chapter 4 and I put bullet points of like this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. And then I
I
move on.
like
I don't
that.
detail it. I just basically put the key scenes and then I move on and then I just check it every once in a while like, wait, I know because it's all there. I know what's going to happen. It's just there's too much of it in my brain, so I have to put it on paper. But then I also, since they're just little bullet points, as I'm writing what I thought might have been 1 chapter turned into 3.
Holy cow. It's just how
So
it happened.
it's and so that's why I didn't I'm not I have pantser moments, I have plotter moments, I have planter moments, but I tend to lean more to I don't deviate a whole lot from what the idea is, but since the idea is just one little bullet point, it leaves it open for pantsing. So I still haven't actually gone through and put it digitally, my little spectrum. I need to, but I
Yeah.
didn't feel like a lot of people were that interested, so I didn't.
I've explained it to my students 3 times this year, and they all love it.
Well, I will get it and give you a link and you can just give your students to it and have them figure out where they are.
Make it a teachers paid teachers things. We're gonna talk about that here a little bit more in a second. Um, do you perform research for your novels as part of your planting method, I guess?
Um, so I do it depends on what it is. I didn't think I was going to need much research for fantasy. I think it's funny when you start out writing something, especially if you've never really I've never been one for writing workshops. I've only taken so many writing specific classes. I've always been a writer and I've always been complimented on my writing and so I just never really thought about going into those workshops and stuff. And so
Right.
you don't realize the random things you have to look up. One of the things I do often is I'll use a word and then I always have to double check am I using that correctly?
Mhm.
And usually I am, or I'll do a lot of searching to figure out the right word, like a synonym that vibes. But for obelisk, the one thing I did a lot of research on was spaceships. Because
Ooh.
there it's not space science fiction, but there is a structure in the story that has some spaceship type elements to it, and it was
Mhm.
necessary for me to understand how big the engine thrusters would be and how tall the tallest building in the world was. And then I had to do a bunch of math to figure out how many floors are in this structure and what is a realistic height for these floors. And then I did some research on what a Victorian mansion would look like and what's a cathedral ceiling height and because even though I understand I'm writing a piece of fiction, I know there are people out there that might be a little nitpicky, so I want to be accurate. Um and then my husband has a friend who is part of a motorcycle club. And so I made it a point to ask him while they were video gaming together one night. I said, "Hey, does this sound okay if I were to describe this motorcycle?" And he said, "Yeah, that's good." And then he was also in the military and there's some weaponry that I'm using. So they confirmed that for me. And so that was interesting. And then in the book I'm writing now as a fantasy, I spent so much time researching the distance a horse can travel at different speeds and under different weights, and
Yes, I had to look that up too for my first book.
and how far people can walk, like, realistically. Oh, and that's always kind of funny. I did that on a couple of TikTok lives because I was trying to make a map, and I was like, "Wait, but how far can the eye see if they're on a hill? And, like, with the naked eye, what could you see? And how far can a horse travel if it's pulling a wagon?" And, it was just things you don't think about until you're sitting there and you're like, "Oh, I should probably learn that." I also, in that research, randomly learned, that you can give horses honey in moderation, and it's good for their health. Because we go on tangents in my world. That's why my videos always start with "Welcome to my chaos." I'm bringing it to your podcast, Jenna.
Love it. Molly Moo, hour has ended. I'm sorry for that interruption. And now back to your regularly scheduled episode of Listening to the Voices in Our Heads. By the way, buy my book if you want to get moo treats. What is the most unique thing about your writing process? Maybe TikTok here and stuff, how it plays in.
Well, I don't know that TikTok's really part of my writing process. I really like my writing process is part of TikTok. Because
I like that.
I've made an effort to post daily, like one video a day every day. And at a certain point I run out of content. And so either I'm scrolling through TikTok to get content, or while I'm writing something comes to me. I don't know. I guess I don't know that anything about my writing is really that unique. I just sit down and I just go.
Mhm.
I think
Fair enough.
sometimes when I get stuck or when an idea first comes to me and I'm fleshing it out, I'm either listening or I go take a shower and all of a sudden like the steam opens up my brain and I can write the whole thing. Um I don't know. I just kind of do. I don't know
Fair
that
enough.
it's really that unique from anybody else.
You plant your butt in the chair and it goes.
Yeah, and then sometimes it doesn't. Some days I can sit and I can write, 3,000 words, and other days I write 400.
I have a mug for days like that. Because that's literally what it feels like when your imaginary friends stop talking to you.
I think actually now that you say that, I think that's probably what's kind of unique to me is I see all these TikToks about people talking about, "Oh, my characters are talking back to me and my characters are rioting," and I'm just sitting here like I'm very in control of my characters. Like they do
Really?
what I say. But like all of TikTok is always like, I don't know what's happening. My characters have gone off the deep end. And I was like, I don't know what that feels like because my characters are very in control.
I have one rogue. One.
I think
And mm,
I think it's really like the story as a whole might run rogue a little bit. Like I said, I had a scene that I thought was just going to be one chapter and it ended up ballooning into three because it
mhm.
was just a bullet point and in my head I knew what needed to happen, but what you picture in your head on that movie screen translates into far more words because you have to describe a lot. And so I think yeah, I just but for the most part, like my characters are pretty much under my command. They do not riot or mutiny ever.
Again, I have one. He likes being the little blonde-haired, well, silver-haired stepchild, and it's one of those things of when I do something he doesn't like and he wants to be in control or doesn't want to be in control, I just blank. He's the only one it
Oh.
happens for me for. Everyone else, it's like you said, let's go. This is what we need to do, right? Let's go. No,
Yeah.
I don't like that plan. You little.
Yeah, and I feel like I almost sometimes feel like I'm left out because all of these writers on TikTok are kind of like my characters are not listening and I'm like, "Oh,
It's
that
not
sounds like
fun.
an interesting experience." I guess if it's
It's
not fun though,
not.
I don't want any part of it.
Hey, it caused my little red herring stepchild to disappear for an entire chunk of a book when I needed him. So it worked, is what I told everyone. So
Oh, there you go.
what, we might skip around here. What
Okay.
inspires you to write then, as far as like your daily motivation or even just to start a project?
Well, I think years ago, back when I could only write when I could find time, it was just I had the story in my head and I need to get it out. And back then, a lot of the motivating force was I just want to write and I'd love for it to be my career and my job. And now that it is pretty much what I do outside of being a mom and the other things I do on the side, I think right now it's hard to really think about like what inspires me to start a story because the two stories that I'm working to publish have been sitting and been works in progress for 5 years, and it's just been in the last year that I finally could sit down and finish them. But I now have a whole folder of ideas where I'm like, "This seems like a cool story," and I think a lot of it is, I just wanna write a cool story. I wanna get the idea out of my head onto paper.
Yeah.
I did a TikTok video about this too, where it was like, people make comments about, well, why do you care about getting paid? You should just love to write. And it's like, but I don't love to write. Writing is hard. Writing is not fun. I don't love to write, but I love inspiring other people to read.
Oh,
And
I
so if I
like
can
that.
write something that people will want to read and will make them love reading, then that's what I want to do. And I love my daughter will climb up into the chair next to me and get her little toy laptop out and just say, "I'm working, mommy," because I tell her when I'm writing, "Oh, mommy's working." And so a lot of that is my inspiration too to give my daughter that image of you can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to write, write. If you want to dance, dance. We're not gonna limit you unless we're poor. Like, if we don't have the funds, we'll find a way to make it happen,
No
um
promises.
but and
Right.
that's still a driving factor too, is I know we don't make a lot as authors, especially indie authors, but there's authors that I'm reading right now, like David Dalglish.
Mm-hmm.
I did a TikTok video about him because I did some research on him because I was kinda surprised by his book, and it turns out that this series that I'm reading was originally a publishing company and re-released. Yeah, right? So I did a whole video. I was like, if you need inspiration that indie is a good path, he was indie. He published a ton of books self-published before he got picked up by a little imprint from a British book company, the Little Brown Book Group.
Oh
And
man.
yeah, and they re-released this 6-book series. And I was like, there it is. Like, even if you go indie, always wanting to still maybe be traditionally published or have a publishing company, it's still a possibility. And so I think that's what makes indie um desirable. And I think that's also just another motivation. Like, anything can happen.
Right. Right.
Sorry, I rambled.
No, you're fine. My editor actually is kind of the opposite of that. She was trad
Hmm.
with one of her series and has since unbound things with them and went indie. And said, she looked right at me one time. She said, "I don't know why you didn't go trad." And I said, "Oh, the stuff I'm covering, I don't think is it's oversaturating the market right now.
Hmm.
A lot of people are writing the same things I'm covering right now as far as themes go."
Yeah.
So, but like you said, indie, it's more wide open. It's easier to slide into, out of it. A lot of indie authors do pick a new author name when they go to a different genre, but you don't have to, like a trad would force you to do.
Well, that's good because I genre hop like crazy and I like my name. So, um,
Agreed.
I think it's great too because what irritates me about this idea of the publishing world, like traditional publishing, being oversaturated and so not picking up more books. If I find a style or a genre that I like, I want to find more books like that, not just more
Right.
books by that author.
Agreed.
So, why wouldn't you wanna make sure, especially if it's about the money, wouldn't you wanna have more books out there that are similar so that people will buy them and read them? Because my shelf is not all, well, that shelf is kind of all one author, but that's because it's Terry Brooks and he is phenomenal. And he
Terry Brooks
also
is amazing.
well, and he, just finished his Big Shannara series, and I still need to get all of them, and then he just started anyway.
That's something else we could do a completely other video on, because I've been reading those books since I was in high school. So
I mean, yeah, but the thing is too is like when people ask me, they're like, "Can you recommend books that are like this?" And I go, here's this author, but they didn't all come out within the same time frame. I couldn't imagine reading something that's newly published, wanting more like it and not being able to find more like it because the world has changed so much that what's being published in the next 5 years and the last 5 years are drastically different than what came
Agreed.
before them. So indie gives you that option. You get on there and you say, "Hey, I really liked this book, especially on TikTok. What else can I read that's like this?" And you'll get flooded with comments. "Oh, try this. Oh, try this." And they're usually all indies because we're not afraid to oversaturate the market.
We're gonna write what we feel like writing, and the only thing that I think, and this is coming from the perspective of somebody who teaches reading and writing, the only thing I would wish is there was a slight amount of control. Please at least make sure you do some basic editing. If
Yes.
you can't afford an editor, at least get someone to read it and make sure that it's legible.
Yes. Yeah, and I've noticed that like I don't buy a lot of Kindle books just because I read on my phone, so I don't have a physical Kindle or anything. Not that that matters
Mhm.
because it's usually like middle of the night, don't want to get out of bed, don't want to wake my husband, so I'll read on my phone. Um, but
Same.
I've acquired a few free books off of Google Play,
Mhm.
and what's a common trend there is it seems to be a lot of like authors from Australia or overseas, and some of the editing on some of these free Google Play books is enough to make me go, I can't read this. And I am
Mhm.
not somebody who like does not finish books usually, but I take a quick glance, I'm like, "Mm." I
When
actually
it makes
pushed
it difficult to read it, it needs another actual edit.
Yes, and I pushed through. There was a series I found where I got the first book for free on Google Play, and then my husband had some like Google Play money, like credits, and he got the rest of
Right,
the
right.
series for me because it was a really good series and it was good enough that I could read past the editing that it needed. Um and I think it's a compliment to the author that the story was so good that I was able to read past some of the editing issues, but I definitely like it's not one I'd buy a physical copy of, not unless it was polished.
Yeah. And I don't mean to sound pretentious when I say that. It's just I know some people, they treat it like it was their English assignment. I wrote it the night before and I turned it in the next day and I got mad because I didn't get an A.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, if you would have edited it once, you probably would have gotten a B.
Right. And the reality is too, and this gets talked about a lot, and I talk about it a lot too, is that something that sticks with me that a teacher told me in college was there will always be a better way to say something. There will always be a better way to write something. You could edit it into the ground, and there will still be a better way to write it because everybody has
Mhm.
different perspectives. And the point is, even if you can't afford an editor, you should still get enough eyes on your work that you can get it as clean as possible where you don't have those silly little typos or those silly little mistakes that shouldn't be in there. But at the same time, remembering that humans are human. And even in big name, traditionally published books, I have found typos.
Agreed.
It happens, but it's one in the entire, 500-page manuscript versus
Mhm.
6 or 7 every page.
Correct. And it
So,
makes a big difference. And I know my books are far from flawless
mhm.
personally too. So I'm keeping in mind I probably fall into the category of you need more edits for some readers, to be fair. But it's like, please at least put that effort there.
Oh, yeah,
Speaking of teaching things, we've mentioned TikTok a couple of times. What is
a
Teachers Pay
couple.
Teachers?
So Teachers Pay Teachers is a sorry, my brain kind of blanked because I call it Teachers Pay Teachers, but I think it's actually Teacher Pay Teacher.
I think you're right.
And so my brain was like, "Am I saying that right?" Anyway, so Teacher Pay Teacher is a online website marketplace for where teachers create resources for other teachers to use in their classrooms. It's like the Etsy of
Mhm.
education. Except unlike Etsy, we can offer resources for free as well.
Correct.
And all the resources are digital, so you can print them. They're either PDFs, you print them, you download them. And now with the whole pandemic and virtual learning, they have now incorporated a lot of digital resources that you can just use in your Google Classrooms or with Teacher Pay Teacher's easel program.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they're definitely my first year of teaching. I had never heard of Teacher Pay Teacher, and as I got into it, somebody was like, "Look at Teacher Pay Teacher," and like 90% of my stuff, because we didn't have curriculum at the school I was teaching. They
Mm-hmm.
said, "Here are the standards, figure it out," and so everything we did was on our own. Um,
Jeez.
so Teacher Pay Teacher, I didn't have a lot of money, so most of it was free resources, but there are a lot of amazing free resources out there. And
And
I
kind of
did
like Kindle, people will put stuff free on occasion for a limited time too.
or like the sales and stuff. Like there are things that
Mm-hmm.
I have put in my wish list that I have saved up and I bought. When I went on maternity leave and I knew I was going to have a sub and I was familiar with the sub and wasn't very comfortable or confident in what I was going to come back to,
Mm-hmm.
I purchased a bunch of resources and I printed them out and prepped them out and I said, "This is what you're doing. Here are the lesson plans. This is what you're doing." Um, so I even now with my tutoring, I have some kids that need some reading fluency
Mm-hmm.
practice, and I'm like, "Okay, teacher, pay teacher, what do you got for me?" And since our tutoring is all virtual, I'm like, "Okay, give me some digital resources," which is nice that
Mm-hmm.
they definitely jumped on that train right away. We
Oh
weren't
yes.
playing catch up with that for virtual learning, which was nice. Like if I had to choose between 2 marketplaces, if it was TPT or Etsy, you can bet TPT all the way.
It's so versatile. Like literally there will be a lesson with stuff in there and it will cover stuff that's appropriate for 6th grade and 12th grade.
Yep.
I've used it. I've never made anything from the sounds of it. You've been a creator. I've always been just a purchaser, but it saved my behind.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I was the school I was teaching at, they didn't have curriculum. They didn't have a math curriculum. They didn't have an
Mhm.
ELA curriculum. They had nothing. They picked up a reading and writing curriculum that was Lucy Calkins. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was not a fan. I was teaching 3rd graders. These kids couldn't spell. Why are we worrying about making them lovers of reading? I can make them lovers of reading while still knowing how to spell. But anyway, that's a whole I wrote a blog post about it. But anyway, a curriculum. We were
Mhm.
handed the standards. They said these are the educational standards for 3rd grade. You need to make sure your students know these things. And so not only was I looking for resources, my focus was science and social studies. I had another teacher who did math, but we also supplemented in our grade
Mhm.
level teams. Like she'd go, "Well, this is what I found." And I was like, "That doesn't work for my kids." So we'd find something else. But a lot of the time I was creating things and I was like, well, if I'm going to put the time into creating it for my own classroom, I might as well put it on Teacher Pay Teacher for other teachers.
Make a little bit of extra cash.
Yeah. And it is kind of the same thing like we talked about with indie authors only making like a little tiny bit. My Teacher Pay Teacher payout recently was like $1 because, they take the taxes and the fees out of it, but I also
Right.
hadn't sold a lot. I think the product I sold was like $4. So you're
Ah,
definitely getting a lot more back than you would with some other things. So it's definitely not like a supplemental income, but it's nice every once in a while to go into my PayPal account and be like, "Oh, look, $5, there's a coffee," or, you know,
maybe at the beginning of the year you might see half a tank of gas.
yeah.
God.
Yeah, just depends.
Awesome. So, what is it like being an author, a teacher mom, and what are some tips do you have for balancing a little one amongst everything else?
Well, I think it's definitely very different now being a stay-at-home mom and kind of getting to choose like I will tutor on these days and I will write on these days and I love being a stay-at-home mom. I love being a homemaker. Honestly, that was ultimately my goal. Growing up, I was like I want to be a mom, I want to be a wife, I want to be able to be at home and do the things I enjoy, crafting, writing, so on and so forth. Um then there are times like right now, she's 2, almost 2.5, and she gets very clingy and needy sometimes. And I have to remind myself, like, she only has so much time with me before she's off on her own. So if
That's
I'm sitting
true.
down writing, and she goes, "Mommy, come here." I just stop what I'm doing. Or I'll say, let me finish the sentence, because my writing I can always come back to, even if I'm in the middle of a train of thought. It may suck to lose
Mhm.
that train, but I can always come back to it. I can't come back to these moments with her. Um,
Oh.
and so I try to remind myself, when she says, "Mommy, come here," I'll be like, "Yep, I'm here. I am present with you." But I am blessed with a very low maintenance toddler, which I think is not common, because she will willingly play on her own and let me write for an hour. She'll just play toys, or she'll
Oh,
come
wow.
and sit next to me and she'll color or play on her tablet or play with her blocks at the counter next to me while I'm writing. Lately she's been a little more needy because, growth spurt, sick, all that stuff,
Mhm.
but it's definitely been a lot easier to write now than it was when I was working full time and being a mom and a homemaker. Um, I think the important thing for balancing is just deciding what's important.
Know which
If
hat's
you,
more important.
yeah, I mean, if you are a parent with little kids, yeah, they can be taxing. And I definitely some days look forward to nap time when I can have uninterrupted writing or just sitting and watching TV for a little bit. But there are times that, like, I live for the little memories I get to create with her. She might not remember
Mm.
everything, but we take pictures, and, like, I'm so excited because Christmas is coming and she kind of understands it a little bit better. So it'll be our first year doing Elf on the Shelf,
Oh,
and
yay!
and she's seeing, Christmas stuff around, and so she's like, "That's Christmas, Mommy." I was like, "Yeah." And then she'll see, like, she watches Blippi do Christmas cookies, and her dad will be like, "Yeah, you and Mama are gonna make Christmas cookies," and she gets really excited. And she likes to stand on the counter while I cook and mix and bake, and then there are times when she wants absolutely nothing to do with me. I'll go into her room and be like, "Hey, you want to play?" "No, Mama, go away. Close door."
She's
"Okay."
very independent.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she is. But so I think I'm just one of those people where I got very blessed with a kiddo that and a life that let me have a little more
Mhm.
flexibility and less of a juggling act. So really what I'm balancing and juggling isn't so much being a mom and a writer, it's being a writer who also has Christmas gifts to crochet, who also wants to sew a dress for her daughter, who also wants to bake things, who also wants to clean the house, and who also just kind of wants to sit and watch Christmas movies right now.
Right.
So it's more the personal balancing for, like, all of my wants rather than trying to balance with my kiddo, because I'm fortunate enough to have the ability to stay at home with her and have all day to be like, "Okay, let's go do this. Let's go to."
And that's something that I think a lot of new authors that don't have those commitments don't understand. You need to, yes, your writing will always be there because it already has always been there. So,
Mhm.
note to me, learn to take my breaks. That's something I've learned to
Self-care
do a little
is
bit more.
so important.
Yes.
Well, and it's funny too, because in this whole NaNoWriMo nonsense, it's my first time participating, and it was really just because I have the story I'm working on, The Bound Prophecy, now that Obelisk is finished, is new adult fantasy that I started many years ago, and
Mhm.
last year this time I finished it. Like, I thought I finished part 1. I thought it was gonna be a 2-book series, and so
Mhm.
I was like, "Cool." I finished book 1 and I started trying to query it, and then just moved on to Obelisk, and then kinda became disenchanted with the whole querying process and blah, 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 blah. And so now I was like, "Okay, for Nano, I'm gonna do Nano for the first time, and I'm gonna finish this," because then I realized, no, this isn't meant to be 2 books, it's meant to be 1. And so
Mhm.
I'm writing part 2, and it'll just be one whole book, not like part 1, part 2. And then I realized, oh, well, I don't think it'll be 50,000 words. It might be for the second half of it, but that would make it like a 13,000 or 130,000 words, which apparently is the norm.
There are some people who write that much.
Well, because the first half is already almost 68,000. But but the thing with Nano is, like, I was kind of like, am I going to push myself to write the goal amount every day, 1,667 words, or am I just going to write? And so I've told myself, your goal is just to write every day, just like my goal is to
Nice.
just post a TikTok video every day. It doesn't matter how much I write, as long as I write. And, I had one day where I wrote 3,000 words, and one day, several days where I only wrote 500. And
Mhm.
so, like, right now, I think the target goal, if you were going to do NaNoWriMo the right way, is to be at like 22,000 words today, and I'm at 13. So I'm doing good.
You're doing really good.
But I made a TikTok video about it because I needed the reminder that we should set realistic expectations for ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
just because NaNoWriMo's there doesn't mean you have to follow their rules.
Correct.
Writing is writing, whether it's 10 words or 10,000. Progress is progress. And you have to be realistic with what you can do. And some
Very
days I
true.
wrote 500 words because I wasn't up for writing. And some days I wrote 500 words because every 5 minutes my daughter wanted to go play a game. And that's fine.
And that's just the way it happened that day. And that's something I learned this month. I cannot write on Mondays and Tuesdays. I teach 9 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Those are my long days. The great thing is, yes, I get a short Friday. But there's no writing time from the time I go to bed Sunday night until probably Wednesday evening.
Right.
So I had to kind of do that mental check-in with myself just this week and be like, Jenna, you are doing your best and you know you type super fast compared to other people. Chill out. You will catch up. You'll be fine. Know your limitations is very true.
Well, and are you more of a plotter too?
I used to be a give me my outline. I was like Gollum for the Lord of the Rings over the ring. It is my precious. I must worship and obey. I have changed a little bit. I'm now leaning a little bit more like 60% plotting, 40% not, and possibly going more 50-50, only because I have learned to trust my characters a little bit more. And I'm okay if something works better, letting it work better. I didn't used to be. It's just, it used to be, I have to get this out. And then I remembered, this works for 5-paragraph essays. This does not work for 80,000 word books.
Right. Well, and I was just going to say that probably helps you write more on certain days when you have the time. Because I understand that feeling. Because there are times when I'm like, okay, I wrote in the morning, I wrote during nap time for my kid. When my husband gets home, we usually put her to bed and then he takes a shower. He's a mechanic, so he has to shower every day. And I was like, oh, I'll totally write in that little like 20-30 minute period that he's doing that. But then it's like 9 o'clock rolls around and I'm like, I just want to sit and read for fun, or I want to be on my phone and just relax. Like, I don't want to sit at the computer and write.
Agreed.
So,
And it's just knowing what your normal life is like and finding where can I slip some writing in.
yeah, I think it's really hard, especially from a TikTok perspective, because I did a video about this because of this. There was, you see a lot of people on social media that are like, I write 3 books in 6 months, or I can bust out a whole book. That's great. Kudos to you. But then I have to tell people, like, that's their normal. That's not your normal. You don't
Right.
have to feel like you need to be at that level, because
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to work for everybody. And if you force yourself to put out a book in a month, it might be junk.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to remember that we are all individuals and we have very individual needs and abilities, and we need to be realistic.
True. And for you, what types of experiences has that given you as an indie? Because you said TikTok is like your bread and butter of kind of how you blew up. You mentioned that on our last episode you were with us. Does that fuel a lot of what you do? Because it sounds like your TikTok content is give back to the community, not just I'm sitting on my high horse, this works for me, this needs to be
Right.
considered.
I make it a big point. So my TikTok kind of consists of, I do writing tips, I do like personal stories of just what's going on with my writing. I share just questions of, like, the other day or today I posted a video about, like, should we be googling our book titles? Because I've seen book titles that are the same. So I did a video about that. So a lot of it is just kind of personal thoughts and questions I have for the community, and then writing tips, and then I throw in there every once in a while one of those like sappy motivational ones that has that like soft music behind it, because I do care. I started my TikTok stuff and I wouldn't say I blew up. I'm almost at 1,600 followers, which to me is a big deal, but
I would say that's a big deal. Congratulations.
thank you. But I I even started doing this because I was trying to get my craft business to like blow up. Because I was trying to make that my supplemental income, which it's dead in the water, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. But I had heard from another like person who had blown up in social media that was like, you got to post daily. You got to make a goal to post every day. Just do it for 30 days and see if that helps. And it didn't help with my craft business, but it really helped with TikTok. And I think as I did that, I came to realize what's really cool about social media now, especially with platforms like TikTok, where it's just small snippets, 15 to 30 or 15 seconds to 3 minutes, is it's very hard to be an author on Instagram because you can only post so many pictures of your book covers. You can only do so many graphics. You can only do so many screenshots. But in TikTok, you get to be face to face with your readers, with your audience. You get to do something that like I personally would love to have met some of my favorite authors that sit on this shelf, and some have passed away and I will never get to meet them, and some I'd have to be able to go across the country to meet. And this is a great way for my audience and my potential readers to see me and to get rid of some of that barrier because I'm just a person. And I think being relatable and connecting to my readers is important, and TikTok lets me do that. And I think
Mhm.
I know how hard it is to be in a world that's new to you or not feel like you have a lot of support. And TikTok is an amazing author community. It's
Very.
huge. And so it's important to me because I've had so much love and support from other authors in the community that I give back for new writers. And so that's why I do a lot of my writing tips and a lot of my little motivational blurbs, and why I say for almost every single one of my writing tips, like, remember, this is just an idea. This is something I've tried. It may or may not work for you because I am a huge proponent of writing rules are not rules. They're more like guidelines.
Yes. That is actually how I teach writing to my kids, and they love it. They love it. Writing, like, from an English teacher perspective, writing sounds prescriptive.
Yes.
It is not. It is an art form. Mold
Oh,
that baby to be yours.
when I had a college teacher, professor, because in high school they teach you like the very rigid 3 paragraph essay structure.
Mhm.
I had a college teacher tell me, the same one who gave me that whole there's always a better way to write something. He said, do not hand in a 5 paragraph essay. As long as your essay addresses the points,
Yep.
has a good intro and conclusion, and makes sense, I don't care how many paragraphs it is, which is why he would only give us page limits. Like it could only be this many pages because he didn't want to read a
Mhm.
novel.
Right.
And I found that very helpful. And I did a video. I was like, everything they taught you in school about writing is wrong, with
And
the exception of grammar.
I've actually been teaching my writing the way I coach other authors in writing to my students that way, and I'm getting much more work out of them now too.
That's awesome.
Because I'm going to be making a video on this possibly here in the near future. One of my students said, "I hate writing." And I said, "And I know exactly why you hate writing. It's because school made it a chore.
Yep.
We micromanaged it down to a chore for you."
Yep.
And they're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "If I told you to write anything that came to mind on that page and I would grade it, you wouldn't stop.
Hmm. Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, we forgot to encourage kids to use it as a mode of expression."
Well, I think the problem is we have structured schools, or schools have been structured, not we doing the structuring, to basically be institutions that prepare students for academic and business life. And so when I did my video, I said, what school taught you about writing was for academic purposes, was for
Mhm.
business purposes. But not everyone's going to go into that. And I feel the same way about reading. I feel like when we focus on saying you have to read this book because it's for a grade, and we don't give students the opportunity to read for fun, then
Yes.
they don't like to read just as much as they don't like to write. Like I was one of those kids where I wrote my essay the night before and turned it in, and if I had to have a rough draft, I wrote my essay and then I muddied it up to turn in for the rough draft and then turned in the original copy. And because to me, I had an assignment, I didn't even turn it in one year. It was like an honors college level English class. and it was my senior year. And I was like, this assignment is dumb and I'm not doing it. And I didn't. And my mom was like, fine.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't have, I will admit, when it came to my college English courses experience, I had some phenomenal, phenomenal professors who, for them, the sky was the limit and then some on what you could write. They didn't give two cares. As long as their very, 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 very vague prompt was met, they more or less would give you, here's a structure, here's a thing, go do the thing. And I'm very fortunate in that I had a lot of college professors who kind of did what your video might do for some. Whatever high school taught you about writing, don't forget it because it is foundational, but we need to pick out what parts of the foundation need to stay.
Yeah, I think that's something too that like I struggle with now as a writer is I'll see videos about the writing rules,
Mhm.
things like things I never knew. Like I never knew like using too many adverbs was a rule for writing. I never heard
Yeah, it
that.
is.
Apparently people are like, "Meh." And I'm just like, I write as if I were the reader. So if
Mhm.
it sounds good to me reading it, then that's going to stay. I've never heard of passive voice until I got onto TikTok and they're like, "You got to be careful. You watch out for passive voice." I'm like, "Oh no, am I using passive voice?" Like, and I get so stressed out. And I think that, that was the problem in high school too, is we're creating these very strict writing rules and all these grammars and conventions, and it's like, look, as long as you know how to properly use a period and a comma right now, I'm happy. Like
Right.
I'm a big fan of the Oxford comma, so let's make sure we're using that correctly.
I so you will get that is the one thing I am partial to is my Oxford comma, and that's just my OCD kicking
I
in.
love it.
You will take my Oxford comma from my dead cold hands.
Yes. It wasn't until college actually that I worked like the professor I had in my like English one, he made it a point to help us properly understand semicolons. Until that point, despite all the rules in high school and all the writing rules I learned in school, never understood a semicolon. And it wasn't,
Okay, I had some really good high school English teachers then.
yeah. Well, and here's the thing is I had some great English teachers,
Mhm.
but I think they were of the same mindset where they really worked to
Ah.
inspire the creative writing, but they
Mhm.
had to teach the conventional academic writing. And so I think they were a little lax on like caring so much about the rules if we were
Mhm.
writing creatively, except I had one. This still bugs me. The rule that still bugs me. I wrote a creative story and in one of the first lines it says um they were like shadows that would steal you from your bed, and my English
Mm.
teacher crossed out you and said one, and I was like, that is so formal. They would steal one from one's bed, like that. I don't want to read that. So that,
No, that is that even in formalized what we would consider high-end legalese is starting to go away and be opt out for you or they appropriately depending on the POV.
yeah, no, that one, like I was a freshman in high school, and to this day it still sits there, and whenever I need to be mad about something it just rears its head and I'm like, "Mm."
There was somebody else I used to write with years ago. They always threw the royal one is what I would call it in there. I'm like, you're not the queen, stop it.
And like I could see it like when I write certain characters that are
Mhm.
more like scientific or proper or just like explaining researchy type stuff. I could see them using it like, well, when one would do this, then because they're explaining something versus like directly speaking to another character. So, but otherwise, I'm like, as a reader, that would drag and it breaks like the flow, and I don't want to read
If
it.
it's not natural, yeah.
So I just write as a reader. I guess that's the unique thing about my writing process. I don't write as a writer. I write as a reader.
I like that. That's something good to remember for the future for yourself for sure. So we are actually running out of time. We didn't get to some of the questions. We naturally covered most of them, but we didn't get to some of
Oh,
them. It's okay.
I'm
It's perfectly
sorry.
okay.
Welcome to my
So,
chaos here with Jenna O'Malley.
well, you can have me come visit whenever you like.
I mean, you want a TikTok? We can TikTok. I haven't
I've
figured this
never
out
done the
yet.
to the talk. I
Oh,
don't even have an account. I am in my mid 30s and
honey, I just
I'm
turned
sorry.
32.
It's not me. I
Look,
barely can handle YouTube and Instagram and Facebook.
I resisted TikTok for the longest time. It was April, I think, of this year that I finally was like, a lot of the creatives I saw were using TikTok to boost their business. I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a try. And now, like, I don't think I could be an indie author without it. But
Really?
I used to try and do the YouTube thing, but then like my favorite editing program that was free, which whatever, judge me if you will, but it was Microsoft Windows Essentials, like the Windows Movie
I
Maker.
love
It's
that thing.
gone. And
It's
I that's
gone. It has wrecked me so hard for not being here for this. Because I know that sucker inside and out for making
right.
videos and stuff for teaching.
Right? It was my favorite. It was easy, it was free, and, like, that's the hardest thing, like, I want to get into podcasting, I want to get into YouTube videos, and my husband wants to do a Twitch stream where we're called Lore and Mythos, where we talk about the lore and mythology of Assassin's Creed and, Phoenix Rising, but, like, it's expensive just to get the software.
It's expensive. It's expensive. If lovelies can't tell, my voice might sound a little bit clearer. My mic came in $100.
Ugh. Look, my I have a camera, like a regular tripod, and I
Mm-hmm.
used to have like a smaller tripod that had an attachment for your phone. And I was using that attachment on my regular tripod because it just screwed on. Well,
Right.
it broke. So now I have like a selfie stick jerry rigged onto my tripod with like hair ties and a clothespin just so I can film my TikTok.
That's kind of how I started with all this, just whatever random thing I could grab around the house. And when I realized the only reason why I got this mic was one, I teach virtually, and my kids were like, your headset mic that you were using, it cuts out, so on and so forth, because I dropped it too many times, probably. So I made a realization that if I'm doing the virtual teaching and the YouTubing stuff, I better get a decent mic.
Yeah.
It's
I
like you said, it's expensive.
Well, and then just even like editing software anymore. Like if you try to get a free one, it's not very user friendly. It's hard to understand when you're so used
Mhm.
to, Movie Maker. And then if you don't pay for it, you get that ugly like logo at the bottom. And I'm just like I love this setup that we're doing for this podcast. And I wanted to do a podcast with my sister-in-law because even though we live in the same area, it's like 30 minutes and we
Right.
both have kids. So it's easier to do this. But I'm like, can I just do two people and record and upload, or am I going to have to pay for that? Like, because I know they have like a free version.
Yeah. And for me, I was used, and this is a little behind the scenesy stuff that I don't mind giving to people to know. I was using OBS and OBS Streamlabs, which a lot of Twitch users and game, because I used to stream with a bunch of gamers about a year ago. So I went with what they used. It was not working when I wanted to bring in other people who didn't use things like Discord.
Yeah.
Zoom was horrible. Skype, forget it. And then, lo and behold, somebody says you need to try StreamYard. It works from a browser. As long as you can get into a browser, you can stream to and from it. And I'm like, that's going to be a lot better. And it's free. Like they have, this is what you can do with the free, this is what you can do with this paid plan versus this paid plan. It's been a godsend. It has made my life so much easier. I literally get a video file that I just chunk straight into my really crappy free editing software that literally just lets me do fade
Cutting.
outs and cut stuff, and that's it. But it's sufficing.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
all I'm doing right now because, like you said, it's expansive.
it is. Well, I love this. It's definitely a lot cleaner and smoother than any other recording I've used, like with Zoom and Skype and all that nonsense. So I definitely
Mm-hmm.
like this. I tried to do like I had a gamer friend who was like, "Oh yeah, try OBS," and I was like, "No, this is complicated." Look,
It's too much for me.
you talk about like not really getting into TikTok because, we're in our 30s or Discord is that for me. Like I had somebody on one of my lives who's younger, she's sweet. She's like, "Oh, I'll set up the servers for you and I'll do." I was like, "Girl, no, like go for
No,
it." But like Discord is so overwhelming for me and I'm just like, "What? Why? You can talk to me on TikTok, you can talk to me on Instagram. Those are my places. I'm good there. Like let's just keep it simple." Like I feel like I'm getting to that age where I'm like my mom where I'm just like, "Nope, it's too complicated. This technology is for you younger kids."
I've already started being like that with my students, and they're like, Miss Jenna, stop.
But
Okay,
what's
I sound like I'm a
funny
boomer. Got it. No
but
offense
what's
to boomers.
funny is all of us like 30 somethings and 40 somethings are actually starting to take over TikTok. And as far as like the writer community especially is a lot more of us because we're
Yes.
we're on TikTok to meet other authors and promote our books versus being on there to do dances. And then there's teacher TikTok, which is
I was gonna say, I
phenomenal.
hear there's teacher TikTok, and I don't want to meld those two worlds yet.
I have 2 accounts because I wanted my writer account to be separate. I wanted to focus solely on book talk and writer talk, and so my other account is just kind of a everything account, and so I follow a
Right.
bunch of teachers on there, and I love it. I love here because I when I left teaching, I left it because I was so burnt out and so mad, and I never wanted to think about
It
teaching
keeps
ever
radiating
again.
my soul.
And then I got on TikTok and saw these teachers, and it kind of inspired me to be like, okay, maybe I can
Oh.
find that passion again. And I recognize like what my passion wasn't necessarily to teach, but to change education, which is why I've gone into curriculum and instruction for my master's. I'm tutoring just as like to get money for the Christmas
Right.
time, but I want to teach teachers.
Yes.
Either that or I want to teach a gifted and talented class because I'm really good at that higher order questioning and thinking and enrichment. Not so, I mean, I'm great. All teachers are great pretty much at all that they do, but I know where my niches are. But
True.
I think I would enjoy teaching teachers to enrich the lives of all their students.
Not an easy crowd to teach because we are literally the worst critics about the teaching process, and we
I
will
get
judge
it.
you.
I get it. Well, and I have a lot of I definitely challenge the status quo and the like accepted.
Hmm.
But I think we're coming to a point where that is totally acceptable because what teaching was 3 years ago is gone.
I
It's
taught
gone.
in West Virginia during the strikes, if that tells you anything. I'm right there with you.
Um was that are you talking about the more recent ones in the last couple of
Yes,
years?
not the ones in the 90s. I was a
I
baby
was
when
in
those
North
happened.
Carolina teaching when those strikes happened. So
Mm,
I get it. And I
yeah.
was teaching at a charter school and we were sent many documents that stated it's okay if you want to strike, but you will not be paid for striking during the workday. You can go and join the strikes it was during spring break, and they're like, we need you to stay at the school for our students. The students come first. So if you want to join the strikes, you need to do it on the weekends. And I was like, look, I'm here for the kids, and like I get it. I can't afford to strike, but like
Hmm.
we have the right to strike regardless. And if we're trying to make things better for teachers so that we can be better for the students, shouldn't that be the goal? Maybe if they fix things, we wouldn't be striking.
See, that's one of the reasons why I hesitate to go into a charter system because I taught public school forever. I didn't want to leave my union protections. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, you don't need a teacher's union. Excuse you, we get abused.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
It's interesting because now I'm in Idaho and there's a drastic difference. Like I don't teach right now because I'm at home. My little one's too little and I'm
Hmm.
attached. I have separation anxiety. There is a very big difference between teaching looks like over here. Um
Hmm.
and my sister-in-law, her son's autistic, and so I talked to her a lot because she was struggling last year when he was kindergartner. Like the teacher just didn't know what to do and wasn't understanding, and this year he's got a great teacher and there's a lot of great progress. And I had to say to her, I was like, that's amazing, but don't get your hopes up
Nope.
because that teacher is one in a million.
Yep.
And what's going to be really awful is he's going to go into second grade, and if that teacher is not on board with it, then not only are you going to be disappointed watching your son fall, but that teacher who spent a whole year getting him to this great place is also going to just like have her heart broken
Yep.
because we don't and I was telling my husband like why I wanted to get into not just tutoring but like offering tutoring for gifted and talented kids is because our public schools, they barely have the funding to help kids with IEPs and 504s and special needs and performing below grade level. They certainly don't have the funding to enrich these kids that need it because
Nope.
just like these kids below grade level need support, kids at
The
grade
kids
level
who
need
are on the
support.
other end. Yep.
And the kids above grade level need to be encouraged and enriched so that they can continue to grow. And yeah.
That's what I liked about switching to virtual teaching, because I don't have 40 kids in one room demanding one of me.
Yes.
I have one kid, maybe 5 at a time, and I can zero in what do they need from me for their sake. And I think a lot of people are missing that opportunity. No, virtual school is not for every kid. Yes, some kids need that structured business, industrial mindset, public school, bell to bell model. Why are we punishing the kids that need to go learn it, get their mastery, and get out?
Exactly. Well, and that's why and I'm excited to see this because I started kind of getting into this and pushing for this back when I was teaching, 2.5 years ago. But I'm seeing it more on TikTok. More and more teachers are pushing for proficiency based grading instead of
Yes.
traditional grading. And I'm like, yes, like that's going to
Yes.
be my capstone project for my master's degree about curriculum and instruction is how we need to not do traditional grading. We need to do proficiency grading.
If you need someone to interview who has taught both and switched over, let me know, because I used to be traditional public school model teaching up until the pandemic. I did virtually teach part-time and public school. Now I'm just at home public school or at home virtual school because it works for my kids.
Yep.
I am of better use this way as a teacher. And you're finding to teach those teachers, and we need good teachers for teachers, believe it or not. So
yeah, well, and I'll definitely reach out because just from my own experience, half a year doing traditional grading and then switching halfway through the year to proficiency based and seeing the growth in my kids, not just in their educational progress, but their confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So look, I will take any input I can get on that.
You're welcome to ask away for sure. So we are going to go ahead and start winding things down, my dear. Shout
Sorry,
outs
we
to
went
anybody you
way
wish
on
to
tangent.
support.
I would really like to give a shout out to Dawn Hosmer, Hosmer. She's on TikTok. She is a wonderful author, indie author who just found out she's got quite a bit of cancer. And so she's currently going through a lot with that. And the community has really rallied around her. And so I just want to kind of send her love and share that support out here. Anybody who wants to check in on her, you can find her on TikTok, just Dawn Hosmer. C. Beth Anderson is really great. She is an author who is offering budget formatting for indie authors. So $50 and she'll help format your book for all of your like ebook and PDF and all of that.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So that's exciting. And then of course I've got to always plug my family friends who are my cover designer and her husband who's an author. So John Monson and Kim Monson, because they are my indie friends and they design my cover and help me be successful. So I could list forever, but we'll just go with those right now.
And I often tell people I am nothing without my editor and my cover artist. You don't understand. I do all the messy work. They do the actual work.
Yes. Well, I mean, I could shout out my critique group, but they don't have anything out there right now. So, and they're kind of keeping themselves hidden, which is fine. So but like I said, there are so many people I could shout out from TikTok. I could find me on TikTok, follow all the people I'm following, and you will have an amazing community.
She is an awesome part of my community, lovelies, and I'm absolutely glad to have her here. I'm actually possibly going to have you back another time for the panel I'm going to do on TikTok authors in the future.
Oh my gosh, I'm still getting people that I'm like, the panel is full, but I'll save your emails. Like some people, a lot of them are newer. So I'm letting them kind of get their feet wet, but like it was nice to see the response of people that want to be a part of this.
I'm sending all of the stuff out on that because of my surgery a few weeks ago. I'm now a month behind on production for things here, unfortunately. So it won't be until maybe even the season finale was my hope. We'll see. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Do you have any questions for me in return?
I'd hate to take us on a longer tangent than we've already been on. But I have to ask because I see your posts for your books, and some of the names are very unique and intricate and hard to say. And I was kind of curious where you get your inspiration for these names.
Are you talking just character names or
The one I just saw, I don't know if it was the title or the series name. It was like Vitalate.
Vitalangica? It's the
That
series
one.
name. As my editor says, the lady who can't pick a simple series name. Um, I'm gonna be forthright. I'm a nerd. Like literally, I took linguists and study of history and language courses as part of my master's and bachelor's studies to be a teacher in Maryland. To get your master's in teaching English, you have had to have taken not just history of the English language, but also linguistics 100. And I took every linguistics course because the doctor that taught it, who was amazing, Dr. Dolly, I love you.
Hey,
And
linguistics
just
is cool,
everything I learned
so
about how languages are formed, she actually taught us like, this is how languages are made for most languages of certain language families. And I just took my knowledge I learned from that and started making up my own stuff. So I am sorry that no one can pronounce them, but that's
well,
just
okay,
something
so
I like doing. Question mark?
on that note, no shade. I did do a TikTok video about can a book name be too unpronounceable? I didn't say it was you, but I want you to know that I was like, these are the books I've seen and I can't pronounce any of them.
It's okay. I take zero offense. It is a choice. I know it is a choice. And I know it's a choice that actually does me more harm than good.
Well, and I want you to know that when I did the video, it wasn't like a I'm mad at you for it. It was just one of those like, is this the thing? Can something be too unpronounceable? And then I just referenced this
Yes.
Instagram book talker or book person I follow has these titles that are very challenging to read. And I'm just wondering if other people have that problem. But it's so much love because I love all of your little snippets that you share, and I haven't had the opportunity to really look at it, but I love when you share your reviews too. So it sounds like I need to add your books to my to be read pile. So
Well, I am looking to build my beta reading team for my second series here soon. To give you all a little bit of a background on it from a different series, since I don't have everybody who watches this watch my NaNoWriMo channel playlist, but Vitalangica is a lit RPG, so half of it's going to take place in a video game and half
Ooh,
of it in this world.
very cool.
It's also coupled with contemporary romance. So
I'm sensing a little Sword Art Online vibes here.
I'm not an anime otaku. And that's the correct word. Weeaboos don't exist. They're not true fans. Anyway, I just
And the
started a
fact that
war. I
I
don't care.
understood every single thing you just said just shows that I also am a card carrying member of that little group right there.
So that's actually, if you read Vitalangica, you will see Sailor Moon show up. You will see references to like NES games show up. It's kind of
Ooh.
my nerdy version of Ready Player One.
I was gonna say it has like I have that book right here. It
I saw
also has
that one right on your shoulder. That's why I said it.
well, I didn't want to make that. My first comparison was Ready Player One, but then when you said romance, my comparison went to Sword Art Online. Yeah.
I'm going to make a hard confession here.
Ooh.
Everyone needs to go to my Instagram and look and see who's reading lines for Aria for the Arsinoe Forest Alliance, that other title no one can pronounce. It's Danny from
Oh,
NSP
very
on
cool.
from Game Grumps. So yeah, if that gives you any indication of the level of nerd I am, I want the head of a comedy band and a YouTube channel to do a character for me. Anyway,
That's awesome.
the second I told my husband, I'm like, you should kind of recognize who Arya is. Why? Oh, curly hair and can sing. Is that Dan Avedon? Yes.
That's
You made the
awesome.
King of the Fairies Jewish. They
Hey,
deserve it. They
it's your
went through
world.
enough shit.
It's your world. Do whatever you want.
That's what I basically told him. It's my way of being like, we need to stop pooping on them. Though, given what I cover in that series, fair warning, it brings up racism a lot. Because, well, it's the 1600s.
Yeah.
I couldn't get around that snake.
Yeah. That's definitely like, I think in the author community, we understand that if it's appropriate for the time period of the genre, like we're not going to be cancel culture with you. The people who aren't part of the community don't get it.
Well, like I tell people, Neftiri handles the racism quite well. She literally throws Ian off his high horse for it.
Interesting.
Literally. So, but yeah, wrapping it back around again. It's okay. I do this all the time teaching. It's
I'm telling
fine.
you,
You're recognizing the skill.
this is now listening to the voices in our head featuring chaos from Rachal the writer. Welcome to my chaos.
So where can they find your chaos? Is it at Rachal the writer over on TikTok and Instagram?
Yep, and it's with the 2 dots. So Rachal.the.writer.
All
and
A's
then,
in Rachel.
yes, there are no E's in my name. Well, not in my first name anyway. Obviously, there are many in my last name. But yeah, so and then through that in all of my bios, there are link trees to my blog, some writing, like side writing I've done for Vocal Media, my website, and my Patreon that I occasionally remember to do things on.
Oh my goodness, you do everything.
I really don't. Like, I don't think I've posted to Patreon since I finished Obelisk, which was the beginning of October, but I don't have a lot of traffic on there. So I did just update my website though. So now instead of it just saying like home, obelisk, and about, it now says home, obelisk, and the bound prophecy. So there's information
Ooh.
there. So
Yeah, I'm guilty on the not updating things right either. The lovelies here know that.
Hey, when you have TikTok where you can constantly update people on a daily basis, why are people going to go to a website when they can just sit here and let you do all the work for them?
That's true. So, all right, my lovelies, thank you for joining us today. And as always, take care of ourselves a little bit better. See you later, rock stars. Bye.
Bye.